NRL, round 4. Warriors up over the Bulldogs, 16-14 at Mount Smart. How good? Let's go check it out. Hey team, welcome back to the Warriorholic. So, a few hours to sit back and reflect on that great win by the Warriors against the Bulldogs there. So before the game, when I went through my predictions, I asked for a few key things from the Warriors. The first was direct, hard, combative running from our forwards, tiring them out in the middle there, not getting too wide and expansive early on, being really respectful of the ball. I asked for them to be really passionate and resilient on defence, across the field, throughout the field, particularly on our line there. I think we saw both of those things, so really proud of that. But the third thing I asked for was a fast start. Yeah, so I'm not that great at dealing with tight and intense games. So to be completely honest, after about 20 minutes, the irritation grew to the point I needed to go out and trim a few trees and listen on the radio instead of watching on TV there. Came back in for the last 20 minutes and I did go back and watch the game again. But yeah, mate, it's not just the Warriors. I'm shit at when it comes down to really tight games. I struggled enough with the bloody Dolphins almost beating the Broncos on Friday night. So yeah, something I'd like to see improve this week against the Sharks. Seeing the way Nico Hines led them around, putting 40 points on the Dragons, I don't think we're going to get away with the same slow start this time. So yeah, looking for a bit more of a better effort there. Listening to Webby talking about that in the post-game conference, the presser, whatever. He did talk to the slow starts and he said it's really hard to pinpoint on why it's happening because they're training on it every week and things seem to be going well in the various scenarios they have in training. But he was honest and said maybe it takes that game where we can't get back and we end up getting comprehensively beaten by a better team from a slow start, or maybe we just come out ourselves and have a really awesome start. You just got to have that game day experience to give the confidence or turn things around. But I hope they do soon because I can't handle the stress of these tight ones. I thought it was really refreshing to see, the way Webby reflected on the game. He came out with a big smile on his face, really proud of the boys, but openly talked to the things that were still missing there. Whereas you saw Cameron Ciraldo come out with looking like he'd just sucked on a sour lemon, really grumpy and unhappy, same as Marnie. I don't know whether it was an act to try and show that they care about losing or what it was, but when Ciraldo was asked what the difference between the two teams were, he simply said Shaun Johnson. I think he was pretty much on the money there. Brandy Alexander, a guy who's been critical of the Warriors over the years, but this year you just can't stop him talking about Shaun Johnson. I gave him and Vossi a call on SEN Australia this morning to talk up the Warriors. We struggled to get a word in edgeways there because Brandy just kept going on how great it was to see Shaun Johnson going so strongly. Matty Johns on his Sunday night show, you never hear them mention the Warriors. Last week all they talked about was how bad that the Cowboys played, almost nothing about us. But his moment of the round was this week was talking about how it's great to see Shaun Johnson back and running with freedom and playing to the best of his abilities that we haven't seen for years. So positive signs, that guys who know a lot more about footy than me are talking up Shaun Johnson. And a lot of people thought at the beginning of the year, our season would probably reflect the way he played. And people were probably thinking he'd be crap and we'd be crap at times, but it's been the opposite. Both have shown, the team and Shaun have shown great incremental growth in every game this season. So for me, that was one of the real positives to come out of the weekend. Now, if we have a bit of a look at how each player went, I'm going to be honest with you. Had we lost, these points that I've given the guys may have been 1 or 2 points lower. But the fact that they really fought it out for me, gives me a lot of confidence. I've got to start believing them and not getting so stressed with these slow starts because the boys aren't getting flustered. They're just staying calm. They're staying in the fight, sticking with the processes and knowing that once they get into the flow of the game, our defence on the line is probably the strongest, if not, the strongest to be in the top 2 or 3 in the comp. We've only given away an average of 14 points a game, which I think is either the lowest or up there with the lowest in the whole competition. So I've got to trust them more, know that we're not going to drop out of the fights like we have in the past. after that quick try that was set up by Kyle Flanagan, we could have dropped our heads and let them put 15, 20 points on us and been out of the game in the first 20. When the Fox got that try in the second half, it could have broken our hearts and we could have just dropped off. But we didn't. We stuck into it right at the end. Those last 2 or 3 sets that the Bulldogs had on our line there, some of the most intense line defence that I've seen in a very, very long time, particularly from Jackson Ford. I saw him make 3 or 4 tackles in a row there a couple of times, and the try saver he made, I think it was maybe on Max King, he had no right to make that from two metres out, but just to grab the guy, flip him on his back there by himself, absolutely outstanding from the guy. So I hope that continues to progress, but I hope we get these bloody starts right. Okay, so back on task here. Let's look at the points that we allocated for the team. Chance Nigel-Klogstead, I felt like he was a little bit quieter. Just watching the game, I didn't seem to notice him do the big flash plays, but he was definitely in there in the grind, and that was reflected by the fact, again, he's well up over 100 metres and 5 tackle breaks, getting in amongst those forwards there when they're tired. I think he's clearly shown that he's just going to be that guy that you can trust at the back. He's going to, control our defence and put in those solid efforts. The guy was on his knees, on his, sucking in the fat ones at the end of the game there, but next thing he's up there taking those hard runs for the forwards. So I'm going to give him a 7.5 out of 10 this week, just purely because I don't think he was quite up there to his absolute best, but still a really solid effort for me. Kosi, it's hard for a winger, I think, unless you're scoring like all these 3 or 4 tries in a game. You very rarely get mentioned for player of the day. But for me, other than that effort of getting burned by the Fox to let that try in, which I put down to all 3 of the guys on his edge there being asleep after us missing out on that try to Pompey, he was just rock solid. He took every single kick thrown at him, and almost every single kick of the game was kicked at him. His acceleration into the defenders and making post-contact meters is improved out of sight. Showing what he can do when there's a bit of a broken line coming towards him there, when he burned a few defenders to make a good 20 or 30 metre break there. Really solid finisher whenever he gets the opportunity. So I'm going to give him an 8. It's close to a 9, purely based on what I think his potential is at this point in his career. There's not much more he could be doing. I think it's going to be really interesting this weekend. I think Dallin Watene-Zelezniak is predicted to be back for round 5. I would say Webby probably goes back to him. You just saw the way he reacted when asked about Chance coming back after injury. He just said, the guy's an international. He's our starting fullback. He comes in. So I wouldn't be surprised if he takes the same line on Dallin when he's ready. It'd be tough for Kosi because he's done nothing wrong and probably couldn't have done anything more, but definitely showing that he's a man for the future, and I don't think anyone would probably quibble if he was able to keep his spot over Dallin. Adam Pompey, he's a guy that a lot of people would have been happy for us to let go in the off-season. He showed the odd game that he's got signs of becoming a really good centre, but it just hasn't been consistent enough in the past for me. He hasn't used his size enough. He hasn't been aggressive enough. He hasn't been creative enough on offence in past seasons. But since he was given his opportunity by Viliami Vaila, getting dropped there, he's taken every opportunity and he's progressed and improved every round. I asked for him to get more involved in the attack, and he's done that 2 weeks in a row now, setting up 2 great tries, in full contact with other guys all over him, freeing up the hands. I think he was very unlucky not to get that try with Kikau knocking the ball out of his hands there. So his attack's coming up to the same level as his defence. So when Braden Williami comes back, I highly anticipate Pompey being the one who stays in and possibly Williami drops out. Also good to see Rocco Berry really starting to show some great signs there, being back in New South Wales Cup on the weekend. That guy is sneaky strong. He makes some really good meters for a guy who doesn't seem to be that thick. He's quite lean. Outstanding on defence. So, yeah, it's going to be some really interesting calls having to be made by Webby when it comes to the centres. Viliami Vaila, he was my pick for the breakout player of the year. I still think he's got great signs and he's a real talent of the future there. But I think he showed in the weekend He's still struggling to read the defence a little bit and making some poor decisions there that put pressure on the guys inside and outside him there. So for that, I've dropped him down to 6.5 out of 10 there. Pretty tough, I feel, because he did a lot of really positive stuff, offloading in the tackle, just like Pompey, making those hard runs, solid in his tackling technique. But yeah, just needs to improve on those reads a little bit more, which is why I think that we may see Williami come back in as soon as he's ready there, just to shore up that edge defence. Montoya, I felt like it was a little bit quieter than we've seen from him so far this season. But still, what do we have there? 160 metres, 4 tackle breaks. And one thing I think is a real positive about him is he draws penalties. Guys come up off their line too early to try and get him because he's so good in contact. So every week we're seeing him getting penalties against the opposition for holding him down that bit too long because he's got a fast play of the ball, or them jumping early to try and put that hit on him. So I think it was about 4 penalties and 6 again he drew over the weekend, even though he gave one away himself. If you're getting 4 and you give away 1, we're on the positives there. So another good game from a man there. I'm going to give him 7 out of 10 purely because I don't think it was his best game ever, but very, very solid. Tamati Martin, again, he does a lot of dirty work that you don't notice unless you really, really look. His covering defence is just outstanding. His one-on-one defence against big forwards for a guy his size, second to none. Those subtle little hands and just, his all-round play is just a very, very solid professional. What I liked this week is we saw him make 3 kicks there. I don't think they were necessarily planned, but SJ got caught up in the ruck, so he had to, and one, or maybe 2 of them, and one of them he actually just put in as part of a break. I think he's more than capable, so I'd love to see him step up and take, instead of 3, maybe taking 5 or 6 kicks. We're just putting people in a bit of indecision there. Also good to see Lusick take a couple of kicks as well, so it wasn't 100% SJ having to do it all by himself there. 7 out of 10 for me for Tamati Martin. Probably could have deserved an 8. Some people had him in their top 3, picking the Warriors this week. So, Sean Johnson, 9 out of 10 for me. I don't think we could have asked more. Every week we're seeing those solid progressions I mentioned in the beginning here, being recognised by the pundits around the game. But even to the average fan like me, it's just clear that he's just playing with a sense of freedom, running, drifting across the field, stepping back inside, putting kicks through, maybe stepping off his foot, then running himself, offloading in other situations. You just don't know what he's going to do. And that's just a great sign for the Warriors. I thought his defence on kick-out was outstanding. He didn't miss him once. He made the first contact on probably 50% of the occasion, supported there by Neokura. Both of those guys managed to slam him on his back and took him out of the game. Even with Tamati Martin and Lusick putting in 6 kicks between them, he kicked for 613 metres, which was his longest metres so far this season. I think we saw a couple of floated bombs there from him. He was able to get a lot more kicks up closer to their line, kicking into the corners there in the end of the game there, putting it out, giving us that chance to reset. So just all round, he's playing at a level we haven't seen for years. So well done, Sean. Adam Fanor-Blake, another 8 out of 10 performance for me. He's just one of those guys like Tohu Harris that you just expect that solid game every week, and his poor games, they're a rarity. You just expect 100% effort week in and week out. 154 metres, 50 post-contact metres and 23 tackles. Just solid guy. I looked at his play the ball speed was one of the lowest in the team this week, but I think that was reflective of him taking a few 15-second plays of the ball towards the end of the game there, eating up time off the clock. But just his ability to suck in players, it's interesting he hasn't gone for the offload that much at the moment, but I think just drawing those guys in, and then if he can actually get that ball away quickly, it leaves space out wide. So, yeah, very big asset that we definitely don't want to lose there. Lusick. So, a lot of people were really worried about the hole that Egan being out would leave. I was too, to be honest. I saw great signs from him last year in the few games he got, but he struggled a little bit in the trial game there, and he got run over a couple of times, but man, he stepped up in the weekend. I think he looked like an NRL starting hooker, not at Egan, Egan sort of level, not a top sort of 10 kind of level, but definitely comfortable. A crisp pass, he was at the ruck almost every time. He looks extremely fit. I didn't see him get steamrolled at all, just really aggressive. He made some big hits by himself in defence here as well. Put in a couple of kicks there. I'd like to see him, continue that. We saw Reid Marnie with that 40-20. I'd love to see our hookers start doing that as well. So, well done to him. I think it gives us confidence that if Egan is out at all during the season, we've got a guy who can step up and play at a decent NRL level. Bunty Afoa, am I being harsh on him? I don't know. He's not getting the minutes you'd expect from a starting front row, but maybe that's a reflection on how much work and how well the Bull brothers, Nut brothers are playing. 74 metres, 29 post-contact metres, 24 tackles for a guy who played 30 minutes. So if you double those numbers and he played 60, that you wouldn't complain about them. They're up there with Adam Fanua-Blakes. But yeah, it's just it's an odd one that he's only getting short minutes. I can't wait for that game where he just has an absolute breakout performance and just shuts us all up and shows why he is in there every week, because obviously the coaches are seeing something in him. So yeah, 6.5, I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh, but still feel like we can see a little bit more from Bunty. So who have we got next there? Ford. Mate, what a beast. Webby talked about him in the post-game conference here, saying he's the fittest guy in the club. He said he's not the flashiest guy out on the field, but the longer the game goes on, the more dirty the game gets, the more tight everyone gets. That's when he comes into his own, and we saw that in the last 20 minutes after Tohu went off. He was the guy in there making those tackles that Tohu would normally make. Right down our line, I think he took 4 tackles in a row at one point. I think it was Max King that he just had no right to stop him from 2 metres out, full on, one-on-one tackle, and he just nailed him, held him up. So I gave him 8. You could almost give him 9. Like, what more could you want from him? He's a starter every week for me when he's fit. Got some sneaky speed there as well when he gets those little breaks when Tamati Martin puts him through the hole. So well done to him. Real good buy. Another example of how everyone was questioning why we're buying these journeymen like him and Braden Williami. Both of them have stepped up. Niakura, I thought, had one of his better games. He was more involved than he has been in past weeks, or at least it felt that way. I still don't, it's difficult when you watch on TV, and I wasn't watching him closely when I went to watch it live, and you don't see the work sometimes, the outside or the edge back rowers are doing. They're often involved in multi-man tackles. He did seem to get involved coming into the middle and taking those setups. A few more than I've seen him. So, his metres was up to 90 metres this week as opposed to 70 and 80 metres in the previous game. So he was more involved there. I think he has a positive influence. Like, he's a big body, he draws people in. Good soft hands there. So I gave him an 8 out of 10. Tohu was hard to score because my mind, I'm kind of just focused on the knee injury that I heard a report that the NRL physio was saying his take on looking at it could be an ACL. I seriously hope it's not, because it's in the other knee. That would be, probably the end of the season for the big fella. But Webby was saying that Tohu felt like it's an injury he'd had before, and it wasn't that bad. So I hope he knows himself better than the NRL physio knows, because we don't need him being out for a prolonged period of time. Hopefully it's just a medial strain or something. It's a 2 or 3 weeker. That said, the minutes he played, everything you'd expect from him, so I gave him an 8 out of 10 for while he was on the field there. The Nut brothers, Walker and Jazz off the bench. Geez, how good. Walker, 146 metres, 5 tackle breaks, 34 tackles, energy, passion, speed, 8.5 out of 10 for me. Same for his brother, Jazz there, 147 metres, 17 hit-ups, 36 tackles off the bench. Those two are just a genuine point of difference for us. I said it before the game. The speed, the aggression, they play together. You can see them making those 2-man bald head tackles together. I just enjoy them so much, and I think their ability, I think they said, to cover positions. Webby said Dylan Walker ended up playing 13, 9 and going into the halves there when Martin went off with a bit of a head knock towards the end there. Hopefully that wasn't something he failed. So those two guys, mate, people questioned, as I said last week, whether Jazz would come in and even get game time, but they've proven those two are going to be first choice bench players for us the whole season if they're fit. Ciro, he had his knee heavily strapped before the game, but then got that hyperextension, which sort of slowed him down a bit. He seemed a bit apprehensive to run the ball, so I only gave him a 6. Probably could have given him less, but I didn't want to go too harsh this week because he just wasn't involved as much as he potentially could have been without the injury. I highly suspect he may drop out next week, given the ability for Walker and Jazz to cover multiple positions. I'd love to see Curran come in, and I think he has more impact off the bench there. He might not have the same versatility, but yeah, Ciro's a bit of a question mark for me at the moment, and particularly if his knee's playing up. Tom Ali only got 15 minutes this week, but he still played solid minutes. I think he had very similar meters to Bunty, I think, like up around 60 meters or something like that, but only playing 15 minutes. So, he makes an impact, but I guess Bunty and Tom's minutes being limited are a reflection on how fit and how long Jazz and Dylan can play. So, no real complaints from me, but only they playing those short minutes. A 6 was all I could give him. Overall, you can make a few complaints about guys. They could have done a bit more, but overall, as a team, we're playing with the heart and passion that we've asked for years. I'm trying to compare back to what we played like in 2018 when we had that big run. I think we went something like won our first 8 games or something like that. But even then, I don't feel like we were playing in that same headspace we're playing in now. I think fitness is one of the things that got us through that year. But just the team spirit and the resilience and the passion we're seeing this year, I don't recall a year that we played the same kind of footy. 4 rounds in, still in 4th. Exciting times. I will be really disappointed if we don't make the 8th after the start. But hey, I think we've already played ourselves out of the spoon. So that's a great start for me when a lot of people had us winning that. Looking at the Bulldogs, so, talked about it before the game, was Fox, Kikau, Burton, Reed Marnie, Carraz, Alamotti. Guys we had to watch. The Fox showed his world-class speed there with that try. Even though it was against us, you can't help but smile at that speed he had. CNK gave it his best, but he was gone from about 40 metres out. I thought he played okay, but I like the fact we were kicking it to him and making him take those hard runs, and our line was coming up flat and smoking him because he doesn't make the best post-contact meters, and I think that's one of the reasons he got dropped out of State of Origin last year was his lack of ability to take those hard hit-ups because he's a smaller guy. So, and we handled him okay. Kikau, I think, just was pretty much non-existent. Niakorda and SJ, put him out of the game. And you often find with guys like that, if they're not able to make, the big plays, they tend to sort of go into their shells a little bit. So that was great to see. Marnie had a quietish game. I still don't think he's reached the heights that we saw from him when he was playing for Parramatta, but, he showed his class with that 40-20. Great kick there. You'd have him at your club every time, but I don't think we let him have an amazing game, and Lussick held his own against him. Max King, solid as ever, great numbers, up there with Whenua Blake, so he did what I expected of him. Alamotti and Carraz and Perham were outstanding at the back there, all 3 of them well up over 100 metres, close, 180, getting close to 200 metres. Showed that they're genuine threats, for some young guys who haven't been around the game too long, particularly Alamotti and Perham. And that's great to see with Perham. He was someone who never really got a chance at the Warriors. Got a few opportunities there at the Eels, and I was really surprised when I heard the talk being that he'd be the starting fullback this year, but he's shown that he's got it there, so well done to him. I thought Okindor off the bench, he's normally an outside back, but he played in the middle off the bench. He's a big body, but he was very, very solid, and I think you might find that he ends up playing that bench role as a sort of utility player, so another positive for them. I think it was a bit disappointing for both teams. You never want games to be decided by poor referees' calls, and I think we saw a few. A lot of guys say, we were lucky to win because Whenua Blake took out Marnie. Yeah, maybe he did, but Pompey scores all day if Kikau doesn't play at that ball, but we didn't get that penalty, or almost could have been a penalty try. So I think both teams had calls go against them, and it's frustrating because I don't want that to be an excuse. I think the better team won on the day. We played better the whole game. 60 out of the 20 minutes of the 60 out of the 80 minutes of the game. But yeah, a little bit disappointing. So overall, I'm really, really happy. I think the Dogs are, they'll be disappointed, but they can take some positives out of that. They're really going to need to see Burton and Flanagan step up in their halves. Like Burton, he's a shell of what he was last season and what he was with the Panthers. He's just got to start running more. It seems like his first option is to kick or pass, but we didn't see any of those massive, towering, like floating bombs from him. Flanagan, he's just got to take some of the responsibility of Burton, or he might find himself on the New South Wales Cup roster coming up soon. So tough for those guys, but yeah, great for us. Looking at the way that the Sharks dominated the Dragons yesterday, Nico Hines outstanding. They won't get that same sense of freedom from the Warriors. I think our defense is a lot more solid than the Dragons, but we're going to have to start a lot faster than we did this week, because we can't let those guys get their tails up. 4 packs pretty even for me. Maybe, I don't know, slight win to us. Their outside backs, they've got some pretty awesome players. Nico Hines, he'll be the best player on the field, so we need SJ to step up and match that. No reason we can't beat them, but challenging road trip there to Shark Park. If we do, I think it'll show we're serious contenders this year. If we hold our own, I don't think we'll drop our heads. We get smashed, well, that'll turn things around. But yeah, I expect it to be a competitive game. I really hope we can beat them. Who would have picked 4 from 5 to start the season? That would be absolutely outstanding. So after a few hours, or a night to reflect on it, very, very happy we got the win. Glad we didn't let it get away from us in the end. So very happy. All in with the Warriors. Looking forward to next week. This is the Warriorholic. Let's go, the mighty Vodafone Warriors.